Episode 3 Ball That Talk. We are with Ralph the Ref and
Dempsey.
And we'll have a super special guest, Hicksville assistant coach, somebody that has been through the gamut. Even a basketball official, believe it or not, no one speaks about that.
Slightly.
Seldomly spoken. In the event you need to get your rec game on at the Hicksville PAL, Coach Ed Dempsey, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is so cool. And this was a surprise to me because I thought I was going to have a whole pie of pizza to myself. And then I saw her father, who I just learned is a voracious reader, just like myself, which is like, we'll get into that at some point. But he just put me onto a book with owls, and I don't know if anyone knows, but I love owls.
There you go.
So today, I know you had a game. How did your game go?
You know what? We didn't execute the first. We did execute, but we didn't get too many shots up the first. We did what we needed to do, and we missed a lot of foul shots. The second half, we come out phenomenal, like lights out. But we got to be consistent the whole time.
Yeah, we talked about this off air of just being a 4-quarter team, meaning that you have 8 minutes each quarter. You got to play for 32 minutes. It's very hard to just, turn it on in the second half.
It is.
When you're down by 16 points.
It is.
So at the same time, you could always, there's a silver lining, if there's a team that hasn't been playing too well, and then in the second half they show some signs of life, but you just got to keep getting on them.
No, absolutely. You keep growing.
So you had a game too?
Yes, we played Uniondale at home. It was very similar the first quarter. We had a tremendous number of turnovers, gave up a lot of defensive rebounds. Only down about 5 at the end of the first. Kids started to play much better in the second, third, fourth quarter. I think in the third we cut it to 6, but we just didn't. We let too many threes go. Again, defensive rebounds, we weren't able to clean up on the boards, cut down on the turnovers, but it was just we hurt ourselves in the first quarter. Dug a grave for ourselves.
So I have an interesting question to ask both of you guys because, as a referee, you kind of try to prognosticate how you think a team's going to fare, and I guess depending on the day and whoever shows up, and it's a lot of luck. But sometimes you kind of deviate from the game plan, and then I go, wow, I didn't expect that to happen. So for me, I had Syosset and Baldwin. I already know what those two teams present. I know Syosset, I forget what her name. They had the tall kid that left, and I know they're a lot shorter, and I've had them already this year. And Baldwin to me is very interesting because it really reminds me of the way my volleyball team is in terms of like the system, right? It doesn't matter who he has, maximize who he does have, and you can just see the system perpetuating because he'll find a leader, right? He'll find a very strong anchor, and you can just see their effort and intensity. Like aside from the skill, I feel like the skill will get there, right? They do a kind of reverse engineer where the effort and intensity is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of just bully somebody by being that 32-minute team. But today, I thought Syosset did such an excellent job of beating the press. The only problem was they weren't able to finish. Even though they got second, third, fourth chance opportunities from rebounds, they would often get fouls where they were on the line, but they missed a whole bunch of free throws. So to me, that's all finishing, and that's all experience. And even though you might not think of it too, I know, Kelly, you've been coaching for many years, but now this is your second year as a head coach. You don't realize all of these moments, even though it might not be going for you at this moment in time, all of these are deposits of experience.
It's for a bigger moment, It's the experience that leads up to the moment. And so probably for Syosset, like this is probably a team like Syosset, things leading up because they're a very good team, and they could essentially end up in a playoff.
Right. So
when you're not finishing and doing those things well, those are deposits for the bigger moment to get you to the bigger stage.
Right. And I also think that it's not really a death sentence because if you're getting those shots, you just have to learn how to. Because also some of those kids in Baldwin now they're more in the leadership position. I've seen them when they were younger, and they were trying to fill in the shoes transition wise when other kids graduated, and they were missing those shots. But now they're finishing those shots.
Well, you'll have to let us know, but usually, right, when you're open, you're going to make the shot all day. Now you put a little bit of pressure, defense, another team you're not accustomed to playing. It's almost like watching warm-ups and trying to tell how a player is by watching them warm up. You can't judge a book by its cover.
No.
Right?
No.
How many times do you see warm-ups and you're like, oh, I think that kid can play, and they're don't even get in the game?
Right.
You know?
Right, that's so true. But what I wanted to ask you guys is that since you both were in a losing situation, I'm always interested to hear what that type of talk is, especially like, I'll give you two scenarios. Like, let's say your kids had great effort, but they fell short.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of upset that you lost, but you know they put forth their best effort. Or they might be in a situation where now it's like 3/4, halfway through the season, and you know there's a incremental improvement, not necessarily a big improvement, but you know that you're at least putting your best foot forward. What kind of speech are you having to your team post game when you're losing? I'll start with you, Kelly. Stop looking at your dad. I'm starting with you.
I mean, I think just letting them know they're doing a good job, because honestly, if you're executing a game plan, but there's just sometimes a team just makes one more play than you know, and it comes down to possessions. I think where if we have, let's say, 30 possessions in the first half, and they have 35, it's 5 more possessions they had chances with. So, you know, I think keeping those things in mind in the moment as a coach is very important, because every time you turn the ball over or, you know, you lose the ball possession, it's the other team, and you just have to make more plays than the other team.
What kind of speech are you having as if it's like a moral victory, but it didn't, the end result didn't go the way you wanted?
We're in a big transition. We lost 3 kids last year, graduated seniors who helped us tremendously. We are trying to build something. So when we play a game like this and we're on the short end of it, we always emphasize the effort. And the effort was there tonight. And again, it's a building block. You take this, we're missing a couple of players. One we should get back hopefully shortly, which will help us out. So we want to emphasize the positives of playing hard. And then, but we always tell the truth. You know, we didn't box out and rebound. We gave up the threes, you know, turnovers in the first quarter. We want to make sure they know these are the things we have to fix in order for us to achieve.
But I think it's a guidance too. Like, it might be one of the players' first time ever in this experience, first time on varsity, you know, first time getting playing time. And so you have to keep that in mind as coach too, that you kind of have to give them the reassurance that, hey, what you're doing is right. Just like when we talked about on the last podcast. If my girl fouls and I know it's a foul, yo, Ange, good job. No, wasn't a foul. You know, like, states the referees, but saying it in a reassurance way to the player who might never have been in this scenario.
Well, like I said, with one of the boys when we were walking out, he's a sophomore, played in the JV last year. He started because of the fact that we missing people, and he had a decent game. He missed a couple of shots, but Marco, it's your playing, it's your experience. This is what you're working here now. This will pay you off later on. I mean, I don't even think he came out of the game tonight. You know, he was one of the few guys we didn't sub for, and it's just going to help him. And as a consequence, it'll help us later on down the road. You know.
So I was actually having a conversation with his head coach tonight when we were watching the JV game last night. You know, I was thinking about how to talk to the girls and just something to say, and I was thinking, we were conference champs, undefeated conference champs, 2 years in a row. To go undefeated.
You mean your team when you played?
I played.
Okay.
To go undefeated, I didn't realize until now, like, what that actually means. When we were in it, it was like, all right, 1 game down, like 2nd game down. It was just one at a time. But to actually now think about, wow, undefeated. Like, you literally had to beat every single team. And correct me if I'm wrong, did we almost pretty much go undefeated the whole season?
Yeah.
We might have had like 1 loss in preseason. So it wasn't even just undefeated conference. We were pretty much winning
wire to wire,
every game that season. You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, just even this last season, my volleyball team went 16-0, and this was our 3rd undefeated season.
Do they realize going through it what that actually
Well, they know
means?
because some of the kids on our team have experienced it already, so they know, and they also know that we, for some, you have to kind of, and I think that's the tough thing about my experience coaching is that I have to somehow artificially find a way for them to continue to be motivated,
Yes.
right? Because they already feel a lot of the contests are already decided,
Yes.
right? Because it already always feels the same. But you know what really helps me as a coach, what we do collectively as a staff is we will write down numbers, and since we've been doing it for so long, I know a specific number that this particular statistic has to hit in order for us to just be successful in volleyball. So I'll say our hitting percentage has to be at 78%. If we go under 78%, we're not going to win. So I talk to kids very matter-of-factly, right? So I'll go, listen, out of 10 serves, you miss 3. We're not going to win like that. And it's nothing emotional. It's nothing.
No.
It's nothing with
It's
effort,
a fact.
right? And you know, it's easier to, I guess, to coach that way because, you know, you're obviously you have to sprinkle the emotion because all kids are different and they adjust. And you know, we'll get into a conversation of like, because I'm interested to hear just your experience about how kids have evolved and how you have to speak to them much differently now because I have a good talk about this earlier this week. But I just think when you say it very matter-of-factly, it seems like it's more attainable because I'm just saying, this is all I'm saying. First of all, don't miss the serve. That's one, right? Let's start there. But if you're going to take 10 serves, I need for you to hit at least 8, right? And I'll always say this is not a free throw.
No.
This is a studio, 1-bedroom studio apartment that you're going like this. Like the margin of error is not nearly the same to me as a free throw.
No.
So I think if you can kind of level with kids like that and make it kind of like tasty medicine, you know, because sometimes if you're too cutting, if you're going like you're not boxing out, you're not rebounding, and you know, they start thinking their sense of self of I don't even know where to start, and then they kind of recoil and they don't know what to do, you know. And then I think it's also very important to just accentuate somebody's good attributes when it comes to the game and still work on their weaknesses, but it's really hard.
When we do film, we go through stats, and I think them seeing the stats and then visually seeing themselves on the film kind of is a wake-up call,
right?
Essentially.
So even if you had a kid, you know, we shot 15% from 3-point. If you get to the next game and you shot 27 is still pretty bad, but it's better, right? So let's strive to get 35%. And I think in that moment, instead of, because I also think kids think of it now, especially, I need to execute it perfectly or it's bad. Where it's like, you know how basketball to me is one big game of mistakes. Defensive rebounds is a missed shot from another team, right? A steal is a positive attribute off of a negative action, right? Block is the same thing. So if you know that, and that's what I always talk about when it comes to mental stamina, right? Like, is my body language gonna change when I have a steal? Am I not gonna get back on defense, or am I gonna have the same effort as if I had the ball and still feel like I'm being rewarded even though it's not a scoring situation? You know, it's really hard. And like I said, I always tell her, I commend anyone that coaches basketball because you have to have a different type of patience. I'm stressed and I'm undefeated. You know what I mean? I don't even know how you guys do it. I give you tons of respect.
He's been doing it a long time.
So let me get into that. So you've been coaching since, you know, how long?
My first real coaching job was 1978. All right. Okay. 2 years at Monica. I had, before that, when I was at Hunter College, I was sort of a volunteer assistant, but I moved back home. So 78 for 2 years at Monica, 1 year at Rocky Point. And then I wound up at the Windsor School, which was a private school in Queens, and coached the girls basketball team for 4 or 5 years there. Then Christ the King. Whole nother animal, Christ the King.
Oh yeah, we know. And they have a very celebrated boys and girls program every year, tried and true. They're always in the mix for winning something. Right. You know, for me, this next year will be my 25th year coaching at Kellenberg, and I know how different the kids are from 2000 to 2024, and how I've been, you know, as time has gone on, my dialogue with them has changed. It's evolved, and I know that sometimes parents are a little bit more involved now. Once emails got involved, and now I feel as though, even though I have the complete backing of the administration, the school, because we win all the time, that doesn't change the fact that you still have to make sure that your behavior is on top of everything, because I know I always coach as if I'm being recorded no matter what at every single turn.
Well, I grew up playing where coaches cursed at you, threw things at you, made you run laps around the gym for every little mistake. And I vowed when I started coaching, or when I wanted to coach, that I did not want to be like that, first of all. Now, also, I think as time goes on, you evolve how you see that the yelling and the screaming, and I'll say it, the cursing doesn't get the desired results, even if you're back in the 60s and early 70s. You get more out of it by sitting down and talking to a kid like we're sitting here talking, and say, hey, look, you know what? I think you're not doing this right, or I think you're doing this well. But to be a yeller and a screamer, there might be a time and a place for that, you know, but I think you as a coach, you grow. If you don't grow, you're not going to be coaching very long.
Right.
And even with the refs, you know, I learned, I used to be a yeller and a screamer, but then you learn that you're not going to get what you need to get from the refs if you're going to yell and scream. And a lot of times it's better off to leave them alone. Or now I have enough of a relationship with the refs in Nassau County where I can say something, you know, talk to them nicely. But you have to, even before the social media, you have to talk to the kids on a one-to-one basis and say, this is what I need from you, and this is how you can get it, and be willing to help. If you're not willing to help, then you're not going to get what you need from a kid.
Well, I played at Kellenberg in the 90s, and my varsity coach was a screamer completely, and I had the fear of God of just messing up. I just know that if I had one turnover, I'm out of the game.
Right.
But meanwhile, I'd be killing in practice, and I never understood, you know, I don't know, maybe it was subconsciously, and, you know, we talked about that off air, how AAU versus high school game. High school game is a completely different ballgame, I think, in terms of the pressure, the pageantry, the music, the PA announcer, all your friends there, and your feeling of going to school all day, and all you're thinking about is that game that you have at 7 o'clock.
Right.
That you want to perform. But what I wanted to ask you was the transition from, you know, the screaming coach, the one that's very boisterous and yelling at everyone and just very nasty in your face. When do you think palpably that you felt that there was a big change where you started thinking that kids aren't going to respond to that anymore? Was there a moment in time?
There wasn't a moment in time. I think it was a transition when I was at Oceanside, when I, you know, went from being
in the 90s, early
90s, when I went from being the JV coach after 7 years. And even as a JV coach, I had a good relationship with the kid. It all depends on how you build a relationship with your players. And I felt I had a good relationship with my JV kids, and I became the varsity coach, and I still had a lot of those kids. And again, I always felt it was just sort of, there was no point in time. It was just a metamorphosis that you could see. I'm getting more out of him being this way than I am getting out of him.
I just want to add to that. He has probably over 50 something years of experience coaching.
No, not quite. 35, 30, 40.
I'm the coach I am because of him. I have the opportunities that I have because of him, and my mother put me in very good situations. But I remember I was like just born. He's coaching, and I would be like, Dad, I don't want to go to dance class. Bring me to basketball practice at Oceanside. And I would literally sit and be playing in the bleachers on the side, running around, and what would I ask you? Put me in. Dad, I want to play, put me in. And he's like, the boys are gonna, you know, hurt you. I don't want that happening. But I think because I was there subconsciously, I watched and paid attention. And then I saw he had such good relationships. Like, I remember the kids calling you, Coach, I need a ride. Like, and then back in the day, you could do that.
Right.
You know?
You can.
I used to give my kids a ride. I remember those days.
At the same time, he was teaching at the alternative high school. So, you know, I remember him, kids didn't have clothes. He was giving some of the kids he's teaching his clothes. I remember one of the boys, too, we had to, like, go pick up his uniform because he didn't have a ride. So we had to go pick up his uniform. And I saw the really good relationships that he had and the time that he built with everybody. And I think on top of the style of coaching that he had, and also the way he interacted, I think that's where I learned how to deal with people, you know, by building those relationships.
Now, when you're talking about relationships with your particular players of this current season, do you find that balance of being able to be more personable with them and then also giving them directives, or do you find that to be hard to partition both? Whereas, like, because I don't know, maybe sometimes they go like, oh, I can't do that. Where, I know you're trying your best to try to infuse that belief in them that they can do it. That's why I'm kind of disappointed by their attitude, and I know it's not you.
No, I think you have to have the relationships in order to give them the advice. Or I say all the time, I have to be able to prove that I know what I'm talking about. So whether that's me jumping in and showing you physically, this is what I need from you, or just me being able to explain everything in the way you're going to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to prove it to them, but I think part of proving it is when you have that relationship, it means more than like, if somebody walks by and it's like, nice jacket, I'm not really going to be like, oh, whatever. But if, somebody that's more meaningful says that to me, I'm going to be like more proud of it because you know me and you might have known like what I had to go through for the jacket. Meanwhile, a stranger knows nothing. So I think there's more meaning behind it when you have that relationship with somebody.
So I'm going to share with you guys Monday. I'm not going to tell you where I ref, but there was, 2 Nassau teams, and there's this new coach that ended up taking over a program for another coach that was coaching there for many years. First time I ever met this guy, and the way he was talking to his team, it was like, wow, I feel like this is what my coach used to do to me. And it was to the point where, and you're starting to think about the hierarchy of different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for me as a coach, I know, like, for one, I don't know if I was a kid, if I would be able to respond to somebody that's,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing? You're not getting back. It's more of like an isolated, loud
Mm-hmm.
voice. I am singling you out while the game is going on. And it's like we're micromanaging and saying in real time, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. And then it toggles back and forth of saying something very demeaning to the refs. Where it's like, you know what, I'm going to empathize with him. I know it's like to be a coach. It's his first year. Maybe this is what he thinks you have to look like. You have to protrude,
Mm-hmm.
protract, show some strength that I know what I'm doing. I'm in charge. But I felt like the kids weren't really, they weren't responding, right? And so then after a while, he started nitpicking at different calls, which is, we had this conversation before of like the 3-second. He was talking about calls where it's like, I think you got bigger problems than that,
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's weird because I feel like sometimes that's a defense mechanism of when a coach has a very high sense of he thinks he knows a lot, really doesn't know the pulse of his team, is trying everything he can to put out whatever fires, and the last resort is, I'm just going to dig into the refs.
So as a coach, I think there's a grace period, especially being new to the team. Like last year, I was new to the team, so you got to get your feet wet. You got to figure out the team, the people, the girls. Luckily, I knew everybody at Hicksville, but I didn't know the girls, all of them well. So you got to get to know the girls. You got to implement everything that you want to do, and then there's a lot of different, situational things outside of school
Mm-hmm.
that determine how kids can operate on the court. Not everyone has good situations or support at home either. So I think there's a grace period you have to go through as a head coach for the first time of any team to really figure it out and everyone get on the same page. Somebody might be on volume 1 and the coach is on volume 3 and the player's still on volume 1, page 1, and coach is on page 30 of volume 3. You got to get everyone to that same place.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job of kind of not making things too radical. I think when you're first starting out as a program, especially when, not that obviously continuity is broken because you're new.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you can really make changes en masse in that type of situation because it's just going to be too difficult to manage because, imagine if you are used to running a specific scheme, this person's used to playing this position, and now you're changing everything, and you go like, well, we don't do it that way. Because now you're fighting off of something that doesn't really matter.
Well, I know you want to say something, but I'll bring something up. I don't like coaches that just run what they want to run. You might not have the players to run. So I think as a coach too, part of evolving and growing is knowing your players and how to coach them. And if you run a fast transitional game and you don't have fast players, how do you expect to be successful at running a fast transition game? Or if you don't have shooters, how you expect to get shots off and successfully make them? You don't have the shooters,
Right.
You know, so I think as a coach too, you know, you can run it and kids might fall in line, but sometimes they might not because
Mhm.
they're not going to be good at those skills and what you want to run.
And it got to the point where he was getting in me and my fellow officials' face, and we didn't know what to do. I mean, it got to the point where the kid handed me the ball. There was less than 10 seconds, and he was asking me, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's nothing." He just handed me the ball. Just give him back the ball, and then, you know, you start administering your 5-second count. Nothing. That's nothing. And I'm like, it's nothing. So he was so incensed at me
Yeah.
that I didn't call anything, even though there's nothing to call. You know, I kind of smiled at him and I said, "I hope you have a good day. Seriously, I just hope you have, like, I hope that you can decompress."
Well, that's the other thing we've talked about is you don't know what somebody's coming from or
Yeah.
going to. You know, there's been times where I'm dealing with health issues with family members and things like that, and I still have to give 100% to my practice, to my game, and not think about what else is going on around us.
Yeah, I mean, that's really hard. So I always wanted to ask you this. So you got into reffing, right? Which
Yes.
was like, I remember
So-
when she told me, go ahead, what were you going to say?
No, I was gonna say after all these years of coaching, he decides to
Yeah,
go.
and how did the process of you going like, you know what, I'm going to ref today?
All right,
I'm gonna
first,
go-
let's backtrack.
Like, how did that go?
Let's backtrack.
Okay.
I'm coaching at Oceanside, and things were going on, and I had a feeling that I might be out the door at Oceanside. So I inquired among my ref friends at the time, like Sam Dominic, and
But this is like 20 years ago.
Oh,
few
Sam
of the other
Dominic.
guys.
Sam Dominic was like at the
Yeah, right.
top of the ninth when I started.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, what if I wanted to become a ref? And it was.
And they were like, you'd be great, right?
Well,
I'm
yeah,
sure
they
they
didn't-
said that.
No, they didn't say that. They said, but it would be a great idea if you wanted to come over to the other side and so forth and so on. So.
I love how we all say the other side.
It's all right.
So, things happened at Oceanside, and I wound up leaving. And
He got like 5 job offers. I remember one
Yeah,
Hofstra in like one night, and he was like, "I don't know what I want to do."
it was like, and I said, you know what, the best thing for me is just take. I didn't even think about reffing at that time. I said, the best thing to do is just take some time off and see how things are. And it wound up a year or two later, the head coach at Hicksville offered me the assistant coaching job at Hicksville, and then.
While I was in high school, so it's
Yeah.
cool that he's coaching.
Well, that's
And
a
you're
whole-
right there.
That's a whole nother story. But anyway, and I kind of dropped the idea of reffing. Now that I have the, and she knows, I run the high school league for the spring, summer, and fall.
Right.
There are times when I've had to step on the court as an unofficial official because we were short referees or somebody, whatever, And even though I have the shirt and everything else, I wasn't a certified official. Legitimate. So even though I felt I would get out there and do a pretty good job as an official, it was, this way I feel more comfortable if I have to step in and ref, and now it's a lot easier to do because I couldn't do it before with my coaching and with running the league, but with the Zoom lessons and the test online and everything else, it was a lot easier to take the classes, take the test. The floor test wasn't that difficult, and so now I feel like if I have to ref at the building, or if I do want to leave coaching, I have something else to fall back upon.
Now, did it change your perspective of officials in general when you took the class? Because I know for me, I've been inundated and, permeated of basketball all my life. And then, I couldn't get past the fact that it wasn't the NBA and there was different rules and all these different things. And there's one thing to know the call, right? We can go to the park, that's a walk. But there's another thing to put your hand up, do this, point.
Right. I think the biggest thing I got, honestly speaking, I've been around the game so long.
Right.
I know so many officials and so forth and so on. I mean,
and you know the game. Like that's the biggest thing. You know the game.
That I was very happy to see the profession when I went to the meetings, because you have to go to the 4 meetings.
Right.
You go to the meetings and the professionalism that is there for the majority of the referees. in the way how you're expected to behave, the ethics you're supposed to have, the stuff that you're supposed to do prior to a game. And I think that struck me more than anything else, because I really feel like I know the rules. I think I know more rules than most high school basketball coaches know, and that's before I took the class.
Well, and also you knew a bunch of refs. I'm sure you were kind of like,
and I'm sitting there like, so I think the biggest thing is the professionalism that I saw at the meetings, and I have I have really good relationships with all the guys that come in and ref at the building, so it helps.
Yeah, and go ahead.
It's funny, like they'll be, in one of his leagues, and there's referees sitting right there, and one call was just made, and they're all going to discuss it for the next 5 minutes, like whether that's the right call or not.
Yeah, that's very true. So when are we going to get you? Not that you're going to quit coaching, but
I actually did. I tried refereeing a little bit. Sam Dominic actually brought me down, and I did some floor things.
When was this?
At Hofstra. This was
about 5 years ago.
No, more than that. Like way before COVID. Like almost like out of college, but not.
Yeah, that would be
like
right.
too far out of college.
Probably about 2015, somewhere around there.
You didn't like it?
And I got caught watching the game.
Oh yeah.
Like as if I was
tough.
playing, as if I was coaching, and I never actually went through all the classes. But he said, "Come down, just do it." Some hand signals I think are hard, but again, we've been around the game so long that I could probably do every signal.
Oh yeah, and you know what for somebody that's played, I coached for a little bit. I think the reffing part, it opens up a different side of the brain, and
but you have to train yourself a little.
For sure. You have to, and this is what I'll tell when there's new officials that, I'll speak to. I'll say, okay, what's the worst part about what you know is that you think you know too much. You're too into basketball. Yes. I wish you were a blank canvas, because now I can explain to you how you have to analytically look at this particular play, as opposed to going like, that's not a foul. I mean, come on. When I was a big, that's nothing. Where it's like, that's not what we're doing here.
Yes.
We're trying to adjudicate what this is. But to me, since I like to think a lot, it's perfect, because it's the game I love.
Yes.
You get great exercise. It's one of the few, I think, sports that the officials mirror the action.
Mm-hmm.
In baseball, you don't really mirror the action. You're behind the plate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lacrosse, you kind of mirror the action, kind of not really. But with basketball, you're there. And the fact that you blow the whistle, everything stops, and you have to make a call. And I want everyone to understand, like even today, there was a lot of peanut gallery, right? And I think what's so interesting is that I know I'm 100% of what I'm calling at that moment. Of course they're going to feel whatever because it's their team. But there's nothing like coming into a place and everyone thinks you're wrong, and you got it right, and you're precise.
Yeah.
And and you just look so crisp and emphatic when you're calling it. And to me, that's the sign of that. That's what I like about it. Not necessarily the notoriety of that particular point, but just more like, I'm analyzing basketball.
Yes.
Amazing.
And I think another underrated part of the game is players knowing the book side of it too. How the jump balls work, how to pay attention to the foul situation. I think on top of being a referee, there's other things that you look at, like, are all the players written down? Because if not, that's a technical foul.
Right.
Those other rules that you're not necessarily as a coach, you are as a coach paying attention to, but you have to kind of train yourself for those things as a coach and a player.
Yeah. So you're never going to take the class?
I might.
I think you should, only because I feel like
I think educationally I will. I don't know if I'll ever actually use.
No, and that's fine. And I think it's more like, don't you want to know what's legal and illegal? So I feel like
nothing.
I think it'll enhance your coaching experience, because now you'll have a leg up with the officials. You'll go, she's not maintaining legal guarding position.
Yes.
It's more like, okay, now I got to take Kelly seriously because she knows what she's talking about. I know for me, if I got a coach that's going, what is that? What is that? It's not going to be as effective as Coach Diana from Uniondale telling me, like, he's not maintaining legal guarding position. It's going to make me want to look.
Yes, but I also will say I've known the rules better than some referees, and it's put me in bad situations where I'm giving a technical because I'm
Well,
asking you.
I'll just say this. I'll just say this. You know how you're saying, and no one ever. And I think we talked about this
Yeah.
before.
I wasn't doing the antics though.
What I'm saying is,
the antics.
you know your personnel when you're playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know the different coaches and how they coach,
Mhm.
right? I think everyone treats referees all equally the same. Where it's not nearly the same. Some people are sticklers for the rules. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm more personable. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So you're not going to treat me the same way as somebody that's very binary, that's black and white.
But my issue is when you don't know enough of the rules. So that was a situation I've been in where the referees didn't know the rules enough.
Yeah.
To now I'm the coach.
They're still on your game
more
though.
rules than
They're
you.
still on
I
your
know.
game. So you have to figure out what's
I
the.
know.
That's
I know, and I got
something that you gotta learn.
technical because I'm trying to ask. Because what the situation was there's a call made, and then that wasn't the right call, or there was something else that happened after that call, and now I'm calling for a timeout, and now we're inbounding the ball, and I'm not getting a timeout because the referee's mad, or I don't know why he doesn't want to blow the whistle for me to call a timeout. So things transpired that were totally wrong. Then I'm trying to call for a timeout. I'm not giving the timeout. And I think it's the same game or different game where there was a foul called, right? And I'm trying to call a timeout.
Mm-hmm.
They grant the timeout, and now the foul shots are being shot when we're all at our bench for the timeout. And I say to one ref, what's going on? Technically, players need to be on the floor for foul shots if it's not a technical. It was not a technical foul. And he's like, you're right. I'm like, yeah, nobody should be at the bench if there's foul shots being. And it was just a total mess.
Mm.
And I shouldn't, as the coach, have to know the rules better than the refs.
Well, listen, I'll just say this. You can't take that one instance and lump all the referees as if that's happening.
No, definitely not.
I just hope that you still, are enthusiastic and still trying to work, because I think that's also a big coaching component of being able to converse with refs, because you need them on your side.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a very important thing.
But part of that comes with time. Well, in her case, she's knows a lot of the referees because working at the building and all that other stuff, but it also comes, you got to pay your dues as a coach too.
Right.
And again, paying your dues, and as a coach, you have to change. You can't be yelling and screaming at the referees all the time. If you want to get calls, you have to change how you deal. And I was yelling and screaming when I first started coaching varsity and JV, but you don't get anything that way.
You know what I think too? Sometimes the passion. So like it might seem like you're yelling, but it's really just the passion or the heat of the moment, and you're trying to like get your team going or root them on. And I think like sometimes yelling is interpreted sometimes differently than what the passion is, or you're just trying to get the call, or that's a big moment that could turn the game.
I agree. Is this season going fast to you? Like, somebody today told me that their last game is February 8th, and I'm like, that's not that far from now.
I feel like the season is going a little fast because we were able to start games sooner this year, rather than in past years we've had to wait probably about another week or so to actually start games.
So what are we looking at? So we're taping this on December 14th. Christmas is coming around. Yeah. What is your holiday schedule like in relation to your basketball team?
So we have 2 games next week, and then we have nothing pretty much over the break, and then January 3rd, right back to it.
You're going to have practice at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
During the break?
Absolutely.
Okay. Every day?
I'm trying to get a scrimmage, too.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Every day besides, Christmas Eve, Christmas, day after Christmas, we're back.
Okay. And what about your team?
The same. We used to be in the Bethpage Fathers Tournament, but we pulled out of that this year. So we're playing Belmont JFK on the 28th, and we'll have practice too. We'll have practice. We'll give them off Christmas Day, New Year's Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, blah blah blah.
It's a lot of downtime, but I think you got to stay acclimated.
And then we have the same thing. We play. We come back and we practice the 2nd, and we play the 3rd. I have a problem with the way I don't think it's going fast yet. Once we get into January.
Yeah, once it's January, that's when it starts celebrating.
My personal feeling is we start with, for the AAA schools, we're all bunched together. We all have to start our games early. we're playing our league schedule early instead of, like somebody double A's or A's are playing they're starting their schedule in January. I just feel that the whole scheduling thing is skewed.
I feel like it'll get settled because this is the first year where they're doing
Yeah.
those different classifications,
Yeah, but,
right?
It's,
And for girls, it's even different than the boys.
Yeah, I heard. That's very strange. So, my final question to you is: you've accomplished so much in your long tenure as a coach, and I feel like now you're in a very comfortable position where I feel like you're not as stressed from when I first met you. You're like more of like, you know what? I feel like I'm wise. I'm gonna play more of the background. I'm gonna help you in the background. Do you feel like you're more calm and at peace in your coaching career at this point?
Definitely. I think being the assistant coach has helped me in a lot of ways because I don't have certain responsibilities and stuff like that. But on the same token, I can do more, and I do more at Hicksville. With having the Hicksville Athletic Center there and running leagues, I can get the kids into the gym and stuff like that. I'm much more relaxed. I don't have anything to prove.
You've proven a lot already.
Well, yeah, I guess, I don't know. But I look at it. I've helped a lot of players. And that's what it's about. It's like you read Russ Salin's article in Newsday today. It's about helping the kids, and that's what it's always been about. When I was at Christ the King, we won the state federation championship, but I was the assistant coach or whatever. We've had some good teams at Hicksville. We were lucky to have some really good talent in Hicksville. Unfortunately, we never won the counties, but I've always had a great relationship with the kids and administrations, and that's what it's about.
So I just want to say, I'm an only child, and my parents were able to give me a lot, but what they give me, they give to everybody else. So you see him have relationships. I know he loves me. He would have never had it any other way. But he finds like one kid every few years on the boys basketball team that's like his son. But he cares about the kids so much that he's always helping them as if they were me, his own child.
And this year it's Big John Osana. Big John.
Well, I always feel like when I go to the Dempsey Hotel, aka Hicksville PAL, he always rolls out the red carpet. He really does. You do a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
And that's really awesome that you're able to connect with the community.
Thank you.
Right? And you're able to get those kids in there. I wish I had a resource like you when I was a kid.
My feeling is for the refs, the coaches, and the players, I get a tremendous amount of satisfaction of having these teams come into the building and play in the league. Some play 3 times a year, some play twice a year, and it's just nice. A few years back before COVID, I was at the dinner for the Nassau County Boys Basketball Coaches Association dinner and doing the awards and everything. And I forget which school it was, but some father came up to me and says, "Oh, that was a really great thing. They had the kids playing at the center and blah, blah, blah." And it's just, I want everybody to feel like they're welcome. I want everybody to feel comfortable. You're welcome. I want the refs to feel protected in case stuff happens. I want the players and the coaches to feel great. I want the parents to feel like, hey, this is great to come in. And there are teams that come in, like Great Neck South has been in there for the first time this year, and they love it. And you sit there and sometimes
it's just the community and what we do expanded into the off season.
Yeah,
and I think that's important.
To me, I'm beginning to see there's a bigger picture with this league that I run. But to me, it's always just been this 10 or 12 teams that we have, or 15 teams that we have in there, and it's just this little world. It's not just, it's a lot bigger than I'm only beginning to see. So it's nice.
That's great.
Hopefully, I can do it a few more years and pass the baton on to somebody. I don't know who.
So there's 2 other things I wanted to talk about. One, I want you to tell your favorite or one of your best stories of me as a player. I want you to do that. And then I wanted us to talk about what are some different rules between the boys game and the girls game.
Like ones that that you point out during the game? That.
What story do you want me to tell?
Whatever you think is a good story. I'll give you time to simmer on it.
No, I have the best story was when she's a sophomore. And there's a couple of different parts to this. The first part is they're playing Elmont in the semifinals at Belmore JFK. And Petroselli, I forget his first name, but Petroselli was the coach for the Elmont team. And Elmont, it was Elmont, Hicksville, Massapequa that year, and maybe Syosset, but those three teams were AA schools and battling one another the whole year. So we go to Belmore JFK, and my wife and I are way up in the stands there, and game starts, and we're up in the middle of the second quarter, 10 or 12 points, and Elmont starts to come back. And all of a sudden, with about a minute and 30 seconds to go, the coach from Elmont gets up and he's yelling and screaming at his, encouraging the girls because they're on the run, blah, 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 and he falls backwards. To make a long story short, he dies. So now, what do? We have to wait a couple of days. We're going to finish the game against Elmont over at Garden City High School. The Elmont girls all come to the game.
It was very upsetting. So Elmont was one of our rivals.
I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the Massapequa game. Anyway, so we play this game, and they all get together before the game, big huddle, the girls from Elmont, the girls from Hicksville.
Because we were rivals, but we had so much respect for one another, and it was almost like you knew them without knowing them because you played against them so many times, you game planned so much. Mm-hmm. So like without ever actually introducing ourselves, we know each other. Yeah. And you can continue, and I'll add to it.
She's still good friends with one of the girls from Elmont. So now we beat Elmont, and I should say, the girls, Hicksville girls beat Elmont. We have to play Massapequa. We're playing Massapequa at CW Post. And they've been back and forth the whole year, Massapequa, but you beat Massapequa, I think, both times. So now they're meeting, and they had Susie Fregosi, very good player for Massapequa, and somebody else, I forget who. And
that game, the Elmont team made us all T-shirts to honor Greg Petroselli, and that was huge. I think we were crying, like I was crying when we had to replay the game. We had to do a press conference. It was just an awful situation, and it was like one of the biggest moments I think in our career.
And she had ACL surgery that summer, so she was playing with a knee brace on her left knee. So the game comes down to the last 30 seconds of the game, and Massapequa was up by 1, and we come down, and I don't know whether it was one of the Breen sisters or Michelle takes a shot, and Kelly comes flying in from the foul line. I never saw her jump so high in my life with the freaking knee brace on. She goes up and grabs this ball, and I'm sitting up in the stands, and I see the look on her face, and I'm putting this ball in the basket, and I don't give a whatever. Ball goes up, bing, bing, bing. You think it's going to pop out. It goes in. We're up by 1. Go down. Massapequa misses a shot. Kurowski brings the ball up. They foul her. She hits 2 free throws, and we win by 3.
Wow.
And plays over and over. What I say to people is this, and there's another story, but I don't know if you want to hear that, but that's when she's in college. I say to people that I'm a very lucky father. I've got to see my daughter win 2 Nassau County championships, the go-ahead basket 1. Then when she was in college, I got to see her single-handedly destroy Farmingdale to help Mount St. Mary's win the Skyline Conference championship. So there's not many parents outside of Tom Brady's parents and people like that, but in this area here on Long Island in Nassau County in New York, very few parents have been able to sit there and say that about their daughter.
And have the input. Like, he was a coach on every team of mine except my high school team. He was a coach on my CYO, coached my AAU, and he was always present, and he knew the game. So even though, high school practice is over, we got a game tomorrow, he's still another coach. Remember this, remember the game plan. Know what you got to do.
The best story. If you want to talk about that, you want to hear one more?
Sure.
She's playing CYO. She's playing for St. Bernard's over here. And it was intramurals, it wasn't outside. So she has to play against the girl who will be her teammate later on at St. Bernard's. and 7, 8 years old, whatever you were. So we're talking, I said, okay, you got to do this and you got to do that, blah, 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 bleep, 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 right? She listened to me to the T. We go to the game. She's playing a wazoo off. And this girl was smaller than her, and she's a guard. And but she's like stopping up. She's boom, 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 right? But unfortunately, the guard was a little bit quicker than her, was able to get a shot off. And we lost the game, something like 7-6 or 8-7 or something.
No.
But she held, with Caitlin, right? Was it Caitlin?
Mm-hmm.
Right? She held Caitlin. I mean, the battle between the two of them as 8-year-olds or whatever they were. And I'm just sitting there like, I know that she listened to everything I told her to do, did everything she possibly could. And this girl was just a little bit quicker than her, a little bit short. You know, she could get around.
So when we're talking about effort,
I mean,
you know, and doing your best and you fall short,
yeah,
sometimes things are just not in your favor,
Yeah.
you know?
But it was amazing to see her do that. And I just remember, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that. She listened to every word I said.
That just reminded me of when I used to do CYO games. They were 7-6. I never forget those games because those were the most intense games.
They were.
They're unbelievably insane. Oh my Lord! Especially when you're new.
Yeah.
You're like, is this how it really is?
Yeah.
7-6,
And then the suspense of waiting for somebody to score the basket.
It's crazy.
Like, it's 7-6.
it's a lot.
Who's gonna score?
It's a lot.
The shot goes up. Is it going in? Like
a lot.
the suspense, and you have the time just expires so quickly because it's hard to get the possession.
And you can't recreate the joy
No.
of when you're winning. When you beat a team 7-6, they really feel like, wow.
And so I want you to tell the college story because I think that this is a huge learning moment for a lot of players and coaches. And not because I want you to tell it, but I tell it often, but I think it's important coming from you. To my players, yeah.
Okay. So we're up in Mount St. Mary's for the Skyline Championship against Farmingdale. And again, it's like the Elmont-Hicksville thing. It's a rivalry, right?
But also, I'm a junior, and I barely get playing time.
And
Barely
I
get playing.
couldn't figure out what the story was with this coach, but be that as it may. So, and it was, what was her name? Caitlin from Flora
Yeah,
Park.
she was hurt.
She was hurt. So
Starter's hurt. Doesn't want to play. Coach forcing her to play.
So she plays Kate Hartnett, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hartnett, right? Good player and sweetheart of a girl. So she's out there. She's ace bandage on her knee. She's all wrapped up and she's giving it all, blah, blah, blah. So Farmingdale's up by like 16, 17 points at halftime. Half starts, they're scoring, blah, blah, blah. She hasn't played the whole game. She's sitting the bench. It's the second half. So finally, with about 12, 13 minutes to go in the half, Dempsey! She gets up, she goes in the game.
The starter had got hurt a little bit more and couldn't really continue playing.
But Caitlin stayed in there because Caitlin's part of this story too, all right? She goes in, first play, blocks a shot, grabs the ball, outlets to Caitlin. Caitlin goes down, layup, gets fouled, boom, the lead's cut. Come down again, blocks a shot, out of bounds. Boom, boom, boom. In the 5 or 6 minutes she's in the game, Farmingdale does not score a point. And the next thing you know, they go on and they win the championship. He takes her out with about 4 minutes left in the game, which I didn't understand after she did what she did. He never congratulated her, never patted her on the back or said anything to my wife or myself. But she single-handedly, and I will use the word, destroyed Farmingdale that day in the 6 or 7 minutes that she
And that's
was in the
without
game.
playing my freshman year, my sophomore year,
'Cause
barely
injuries.
playing my junior year.
Yep.
But because the coach didn't want to play me, we had better players my freshman year, surgeries, but really, I was out playing starters in practice. And my assistant coach was phenomenal. He's like, after that game, he said to me, coach is never going to admit it, but you won us that game.
Yeah.
And he would always tell me every practice, every game, keep working, keep working, keep working. Like, your moment's going to come, your moment's going to come. And my assistant coach was so proud of me. And even there's people at school, I didn't even know they knew who I existed. And after the game, they're like, yo, that was crazy, blah, blah, blah. And again, it's about your moment. You might have 5 seconds for your moment. You might have the 6 minutes you're in the game for that moment. You're going to have a moment. It's not going to last long. And you have to be ready and prepared for that moment.
Andy Warhol's 15 Minutes of Fame, you know that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Now, what is some advice that you want to give to parents? Because you were a basketball parent and you knew the game and you had the connections. But there's a lot of parents, the majority, and I didn't realize this until like I started really coaching recently, that it's not the norm for parents to know sports and have the connections. A lot of the parents don't know sports, don't know where to get their kid to play. I was lucky to have you, but the norm is not parents knowing. Like, I have parents tell me, I don't even know what AAU is. So what's some advice that as a coach, as a parent yourself, you can give?
Well, you know what I did. I made up a stat sheet like this long, and I sat up in the stands and I kept the stats for the girls so I keep my mouth shut. I'd say 1, keep your mouth shut. That's the biggest thing. 2, if you really want to help your child learn something about the game, learn the rules, blah, blah, blah. 3, if you think you should always get help for your kids, get a trainer. Find out what's out there to get your kid involved and to make your kid better. Because your kid is not going to become better just by playing from November to February. Sometimes Kelly would go in the backyard with me and we'd shoot around, but she didn't like that. And I said to myself, and I discovered Jay
Jason
Hernandez and his Pro Hoops group, which is, to me, was excellent, all right? And I paid the money once a week, sometimes maybe twice a week, to take her to Jay. And I sat on the sidelines and I kept my mouth shut and I watched Jay, or I watched, what's her name, Beth Lesueur.
John Randazzo.
I watched
Beth Lesueur.
yeah.
Like, that's who I was training with. Like, Beth Lesueur is top, within the top 5.
All-time leading scorer.
There's another story we forgot. But I kept my mouth shut and I sat there and I watched. And the best thing you can do is give your kids the opportunity to be successful. And not every kid has a parent like myself who knows the game, whether it's football, basketball, lacrosse, whatever. I would never pretend to know lacrosse or soccer. Football, maybe, but you know.
When I was playing volleyball, he would just encourage me a lot. And he ended up learning volleyball because he was an assistant volleyball coach at Hicksville at one point.
Yeah,
I don't know if you knew that.
For the boys.
But, he also reinforced even in volleyball, like, make sure you get here, make sure you get there, make sure you get low and explode on your blocks,
What was it? There was just a story I had.
John Randazzo.
Oh, okay. So, playoff game. I don't know if it was the year you won, if that was the year. You're playing Herrick's. And she wasn't having a great shooting time. So I called up John. Now, you know that I coached John. Okay, I coached John at Oceanside, all right? So I have a very good relationship with John. And his sister played for us at Hicks at Oceanside. So I took her down to John, wherever they were training. He worked on her shot. Next day, we go to Herrick's. You were 5 for 5, I think, in the first half. They were count.
Was that the game? My first game back off the ACL?
Oh, was it? Maybe.
It might have been.
Might have been. Oh, so it wasn't a playoff game, but they were concentrating on Michelle Karowski and the Breen sisters. She's wide open. Boom, pew, boom, pew. And all because I took her the day before or whatever to John, and John's great in teaching you how to shoot and all this other stuff. He was a great shooter himself. I think he still holds the highest average at Oceanside for points per game average.
And played in Italy, breaking records, phenomenal shooter.
And she nailed it. And then of course they decided, okay, we're not gonna let her shoot anymore. And so she didn't see the ball that much, but it didn't matter. The damage was already done. They were up by 10-15 and the game was over.
I don't have any of these exploits in high school.
Not even with volleyball?
Oh, well, volleyball is a different story. But just going back to what you were saying as a parent of volleyball, I want to give a shout out to all my parents. They know nothing. They just know we win, so they just back up.
Right.
But it's it's perfect for us because I'm fortunate to have a group of kids that their parents already understand. Like we're just not going to tolerate meddling. Like we've already won multiple championships. There's not anything that you're going to say to me that's going to make me understand to be more successful. But that's really cool, man. That's a it's a cool story to hear you guys intertwined and how you've, really poured your passion and you've kind of sublimated it into her.
I will
really
never,
cool.
but I will. The biggest advice to parents is, especially with basketball, everybody thinks they know basketball, and the reality is, unless you've played it, okay. And I played in high school, I played in college, I played what I would call the bar, the beach leagues for years, until it finally got to the point where and I know the game. I know how to play the game. I know. I think I know how to coach the game. And now I know how to ref the game. I mean, but if you're going, learn the game. But a lot of these parents think just by watching basketball, and I'm
By
sorry,
basketball, you mean the NBA?
NBA basketball. That's not basketball. I don't care what anybody says. I have a problem with the NBA.
College basketball is the best basketball I think to watch.
Well, you just can't watch LeBron James and then think that it's going to translate to a high school game.
No.
Right.
That's all.
No.
That's all I want just to convey.
Right. But learn, if you can do it, learn the game. But it's a complex game because
Very.
First of all, you have to be in great shape to play. Second of all, I don't care what you say, you have to be ambidextrous. If you're not ambidextrous, you cannot play this game.
This is where I get it from. You have to go left.
Yeah, and that's why I try to tell kids, you play flag football. It's like basketball, and it takes all the skill out because all I got to do is catch the ball and run. You don't got to dribble.
Right.
You don't have to shoot in a little rim. Right. You just run to a spot and score.
Yep.
So I think basketball, it's definitely underrated, the fact that how skilled you have to be, how refined you have to be. And I think you're learning what it's like to coach kids that you're trying to refine their skills, which is a difficult thing.
See, the only sport that I would equate the similarity to is ice hockey. Because again, you have to be able to...
You have to skate minimum.
Skate, and then you have to be able to handle the stick, then
Right.
you got to be able to go left, be able to use your righty or lefty.
And lacrosse, too.
And lacrosse, But, but learn the game. And study it, but study the right stuff. Don't study the NBA.
So calls, boys and girls calls, what are differences?
Well, I'll tell you something that was different that recently became the same. Before, in a high school boys basketball game, within the first half, you're allowed to have 7 fouls, and then would be 1-and-1, meaning if you miss one, you don't shoot, but if you make the first, then you shoot the second one. And then after 10 fouls, it's a double bonus.
Right.
But now they just universally changed it for both boys and girls, where it's 5 fouls and 2 shots, which I personally think is better. I always find my girls' games are a smidge faster because of that. Only because in boys, there's you go through the whole routine of, okay, now we're in 1-on-1, sub before the first shot.
I prefer 1-on-1 because I think you can stay in the game versus just 2 shots. Because if you're down by 3 and they make those 2 shots, now you're down by 5.
Yes, okay, but at the same time, there's also other scenarios where I think it's disadvantageous when it comes to 1-on-1. For instance, if, let's say it's the fourth quarter and there's 3 minutes left and you're down by 7 and now you're trying to foul them on purpose and you only have 1 foul, you got to foul them 6 times, which is it's so disruptive too. Because now you're coming back, but you keep doing that negative action.
And as a ref, you're predetermining that, right? Because the coach is saying foul.
Yes, but that's also a fine line too, because depending on how adversarial they've been, how much control kids have. Some kids don't know how to foul correctly either when it's in that situation. So, and also, I think coaches don't really practice that, right? Sometimes when they're in that situation, they're saying it for the first time in a real game, as opposed to saying, if we're in the situation, this is the correct way to foul. It's always, I'm learning this in real time, and now it's an interaction between me trying to tell the kid not to foul that way, but meanwhile, I understand what the coach is doing, but it's because of the lack of training of how he should be fouling. Yeah. But, different differences, I'll give you 2 really easy from starting this year. When you, with your own volition, if you run out of bounds on purpose to get an advantage, it used to be an automatic violation, but now it's a delayed violation. If they come back in, you basically signal this, but you don't call anything, because if somebody else touches the ball before you touch the ball, when you're in bounds, it's nothing. But if they're the next person to touch the ball, so for instance, let's say they run a play, there's an action, I screen, I'm right at the bottom of the basket, and I purposely take the screen, I go out of bounds, and then now I'm going at the short corner on the left side and catch the ball, that's illegal. And then girls, we have something called faking the foul. I don't know if anyone's ever called it. You do this when it happens. That's also a delayed whistle.
Also known as a flop.
It's a flop. So basically, we're trying to root out when kids are doing that. Now, I think that's very difficult, especially for refs that haven't played the game. There's a lot of amazing refs that really just adjudicate rules by just understanding the rules in a binary way. However, I think in this particular situation, I think it's very difficult because I think if you play, you know what flops look like. You know what I mean? You know, and I'll always tell this to a kid, right? So, you know, there'll be a timeout and the kid will go, oh, and he'll go, where was the foul? And I'm like, you know, that's not the right pitch of a sound when you get hit like that. And on top of that, I feel like you make that pitch every single time, no matter how you get hit.
So something I want to say is every referee interprets the rules differently. We have a referee interpreter, right? So I just want to shed light on interpreting because it's kind of like an opinion almost. Every referee is going to call a reach differently because they interpret it a little differently.
Yes. So here, I'll give you a perfect example. We'll do it with me and Ed. So Ed, I'm assuming, was playing more post play, right? You're not a point guard. I'm a point guard. So right off the bat, I have different emphasis of how I played and how you played. So I think for you, if you are going to, you know, referee two people in the post, you're looking for different things as opposed to me where I can kind of just visualize that. Like, I was never Hakeem Olajuwon. I was never Patrick Ewing. I don't know what that's like, but I can see it. I know what that is. And then for me, I know I'm somebody that worked on my dribble, right? So if I see a kid that works on his dribble and it's a little bit, you know, kind of like a carry, I'll give it to him because I'm like, I know you worked on that move. Now, if there's another kid that I know he definitely didn't work on the move, but he saw last night James Harden did this, then I'm going to call it. So I think when it comes to the interpretation, you also have to understand what makes him tick as a basketball player, right? Because I think it's important to go like, all right, this guy's tall, and this is how I would interpret it as a player or as a coach. I'm like, okay, he's a tall ref. I'm assuming he played in the post a lot. Okay, so he's probably going to be a little bit more tic-tac with that, right? Or if you see somebody like me, and you might not know that I played, you might go, okay, maybe he knows how to dribble, maybe, you know what I'm saying? So I think everyone has different
But I think
things.
It's interesting that every ref is going to interpret the rules differently. And interpret is an interesting word for that.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like just referee as a, you know, advocation of something that you do on the side, what I love about it is that it's like a new experience every day.
I always think it's interesting what referees' day jobs are. Like, some people are dentists, and I'm like, I would have never thought you were a dentist. Like,
I know exactly who you're talking about.
But I'm just
You're a
saying,
dentist?
it's very interesting
Yeah.
to get to know, like, wow, you ref, but this is like your second job. And you actually have, you know, this whole other job. And it's so interesting to me, like, the walks of life that these people come from when you're a ref.
Yeah, you know what? It's a big thrill because I know that, you know, I had my opportunity to, you know, when I was at Kellenberg to shine in the big moments. I definitely never shined in the big moments at all. But it's an honor for me to be at a Chaminade versus Holy Trinity game where stands are packed. These are the games I used to play. I mean, I didn't really play, but now I understand, like, and I feel like for me, this is like a second chance to, like, now that I'm more mature and I'm more confident about it, at least I can still have an imprint on the game, which is awesome for me. And what I love about reffing especially is that it removes all the emotional components as you guys are in terms of like the connection that you have with your team and your other coaches and the longevity that it has given me for basketball. I feel like I'm going to be involved for a very long time.
It's less stress.
Oh yeah, much less stress.
But I want to also make that a point to say it again. The referees, this is their second job. You know, I don't think a lot of fans or parents or people watching the games realize that this referee, these two referees reffing this game have a full-time job, and this is a side thing or a secondary thing that they do as a referee.
Right.
I think it's interesting.
And I also think the people that get so upset about the refs make it an undesirable profession for a lot of people, because trust me, like, as much as I'm passionate about it, how I have such a great group of network of men and women that also love officiating, that there's not a line out the door for me to get people to convince a ref. And
there's not.
There's nothing I can say about money. There's nothing I can say about exercise. It's going to be something that you really just have to have a passion for. So,
do you know that there were 65 middle school games that didn't have referees last week?
Is that one day? Because I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know if it was one day, but I know that, I was talking to Sammy again, and he was telling me that a whole mess of junior high games didn't have referees.
I believe it.
Because there's such a shortage of referees.
I believe it. I mean, think about it. It's, and it's really a sink or swim situation, because it all depends on your how you are as a person too, right? Like, if you're good at adversity, imagine if you have your first day of reffing and it goes terrible. It might make you not want to do it ever again.
Yeah.
Right? And that also leads to, like, was your partner encouraging?
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to go back out there after you felt like you got embarrassed? Because what's the worst thing about reffing is that, okay, it's your first day. I know something about basketball, but I don't really know what to look like. I have no idea. I'm just kind of like calling the calls, and then somebody just getting at you, and they're not empathizing. It's your first day. What makes somebody want to show up again?
Yeah.
It takes a special type of person that does collegiate games, varsity games, the NBA, to get killed. Like today, I was getting killed. Not really killed, but I find it funny. I don't find it like, now I'm scared. I'm just like, okay, whatever. Because I know what I'm doing. But you have to have that self-confidence, and that also comes with time.
Yeah.
Some people don't stay long enough to even feel that, though.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to just I try to tell people in the beginning in reffing is that, the yelling part is only like 10%. It's really not as much as you think, but everyone focuses on that 10% 100% of the time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But luckily we're having these conversations, so we're normalizing that, referees and coaches can get along, and also coaches can also referee.
Yes.
So I think it's just important to know that, I value your space in the community of basketball, and just know that referees like me, I love the game just as much as you do, and we're all trying to do the best that we can to be able to be part of the game.
And I think it's all giving back. Like, you're giving back in a different way than us coaching.
Yeah. And I think it's necessary for you guys to go through that, and it's necessary for us, because if you don't have a coach, we're not playing a game.
And we're all giving back together. You're reffing his league, he's running the league. Like, we're all part of doing it together at the same time.
Yeah. All right, I think we'll wrap this up. We had a lot of story time, and this was great.
It was. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Coach Dempsey.
I appreciate all you've done. Ralph?
All right.
Well, Ralph, I think you're one of the best officials in the county. So
thank you. That really means a lot.
No, I'm serious. And I'm happy we finally got you into the building.
That means a lot to me.
That wasn't like, sometimes I feel like we should get other people involved, but I haven't,
I'm just happy I play my part. Ralph the Ref, Coach Dempsey, we out of here. Peace.